my most important thing in my life is my family.
Mm-hmm.
That's a stupid answer. Because the most important person in your life should be you.
Today we're with Tony. He's a stay-at-home dad. He's an entrepreneur. He's the founder of Human Dad. And Tony is going to show us how to stay fit when we have kids, give us a new way to think about how to live life uncompartmentalized, so not splitting up into little pieces. Tony, thanks for being here.
No, Tim, thanks for having me. Pleasure's mine.
Awesome. Before we jump in, I was looking up some stats because I noticed that you had a lot of content that was related to being stressed or not stressed, balancing your work and your life together. And did you know that 2/3 of fathers report feeling at least moderately stressed about work-life balance? So that's 66% or so. 65% of working parents report burnout of some kind. There was another site that said 92% of parents feel burnout. So I don't know who's right, but apparently it's above 60% somewhere.
Right.
And
we'll
the most interesting one I thought was that 46% of moms and 45% of dads, so almost half of both genders, feel judged all the time or nearly all of the time. And there was another caveat to that stat, and it said that 90% of moms and 85% of dads feel judged. So almost 50% of them feel judged all the time. 90% or so feel judged to some degree somewhere. And so as we get into, living life all the way in, I want us to ponder some of those things, that there's men out there who are struggling to just live life all the way with their family and not feel like they're doing something wrong, or not feel like they're having to be torn away from their family to work, or be torn away from work to be with their family.
Totally.
And so before we jump into that, I want you to tell me one of the most impactful life events that's shaped you as a father.
It's hard to say, because there is a massive event that I think had changed my perspective, just as a whole. And it was as we were trying to get pregnant, if that counts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we went through a very, very rough time, about a 3-year span where we were trying to get pregnant. I mean, pretty much we're trying to conceive ever since we were married, because it's fun.
Yeah.
But also, we really wanted a kid, so we were like, how can we do it? But nothing was really happening, right? So we decided to eventually get tested. Hey, what's going on? Maybe it's her, maybe it's me. It turns out it's neither of us, just for whatever reason. Our boys and girls don't like to mix for whatever reason. So instead of trying to find some other guy to be with my wife, I was like, hey, let's go the route of IUI or IVF, which if people don't know, it's a very amazing.
What's IUI? I'm not familiar with that.
So IUI, I forget the acronym specifically, but ultimately it's they'll take your boys, right, and her eggs, and they'll try to figure out a way to implant them into your wife.
Okay.
And then IVF is a little bit more of an aggressive procedure where they're doing hormone shots and everything they can to ultimately get your
fertilization to happen.
And your wife's levels, testosterone, estrogen, kind of level out and get it where it needs to be. And they track everything perfectly. And so we went through both those processes over the course of 3 years, and it's very pricey. And then during this time, I'm I never kind of really wanted a kid anyway, if I'm being honest. It just wasn't really in my wheelhouse. It was like, hey, I want to travel the world and I want to have some fun. So we're going through this whole process, and even still, my wife really wants to have a kid. So of course, naturally, I'm getting more and more sold in the idea until we're 3 years in and $250,000 in. And I'm like, sweetheart, I mean, that's, something's not working. We did this thing 5 or 6 times already. It's costing us a lot. Maybe do we adopt? A lot of kids need to be adopted. Maybe we look at another thing. And of course, like most women, she wants that feeling of being a mother. There's nothing like it, right? I mean, we're never going to know it, right, Tim? But you talk to any mother and they're like, it's just, this is my purpose. It's nothing better than this. So she wanted that feeling, and I wanted to give that to her somehow. So we're like, all right, let's do it one more time. But if not, we gotta pull the cards in. I mean, this is it, right? So thankfully, boom, it worked. 5th time's a charm. And it finally happened. She got pregnant, and I didn't realize it until we got the call, because unlike getting pregnant and looking at a pregnancy test during this process, you only know through blood work. So you follow up with the doctor, after about, I think it's 3 or 4 weeks, if I remember correctly. And within that time, they'll tell you if you're pregnant. So you go in, you get the blood work done, and then you get a phone call. So it's not as sexy as looking at a test randomly.
Test, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I missed my period. Let me take a test. Like, that's the cool rom-com story of it. So imagine the disappointment my wife and I felt. Now it's like, oh, now it's a phone call. I have it all on video too. And I watch it at least once a month to keep me humble. But she said, you guys are pregnant. And I dropped the phone, and we both just bawl crying. And that moment, Tim, to answer your question, that was the moment where everything changed for me. Like my idea of what I am going to do for work changed. My idea of just overall, like everything. I can't explain it. I'm sure you could probably relate, but your body changes, your mind changes. And I think that moment, the reason it's so impactful for me is because I never thought I wanted a kid until that happened. But then I think the fact that it took so long, it is a gift, because I think I appreciate it more. I can't speak for every father out there, but I would imagine if you have a one-night stand with some random girl and get her pregnant, you're probably not as excited about being a father as I was in that moment. And I think that's the difference, is that was the most impactful thing, because it made me appreciate having a kid and what that means, and the power of it, and the gift that we're given. And not everyone can get that gift. Some people go through IUI and IVF and they never ever get pregnant.
Yeah.
And someone has to adopt, and that's beautiful as well. But what we were trying to do and getting that, now as a father, I take it much more seriously, because I know it is very rare, and it was very difficult for us. So,
yeah, I mean, that delayed, some people might call it delayed gratification, but the delayed gift, right,
delayed gift,
more valuable than the one you get for nothing in some ways. And that is special.
That's right.
I certainly can concur with one, that as men, we have a difficult time understanding what it's like for a woman to have a child within her, to have her hormones change, to feel the child kicking from inside. That's certainly a wholly different experience. I know that for many men I know, it kind of doesn't seem real until they can feel the baby kicking on the outside. And then even still, it's not quite real until the baby emerges. And then you go, whoa, wait a minute. That's a full-grown human there.
Yeah,
how incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And again, I capture this all on video, thankfully. My wife hates me because I'm a content creator, but in those moments, she loves me because my cameras were at the hospital and we got everything. But yeah, you could see my reaction, and hers, of course. Hers is much more terrifying. But mine was, I was lucky because she was doing all the hard work, right? But it was interesting because, I wasn't emotional until the moment my daughter popped out.
Yeah.
That's when it, to your point,
hits you.
Yeah, like if I had to sum up, I think with every father and every mother, of course, depending on how much drugs she's on, but that's the moment that it's real. Like it's a real thing, because you're right. When it's in the belly, you don't, there's some excitement, but it's kind of like, what are we doing? What are you going to look like? Like, are you going to have black hair? Are you going to have blonde hair? Like what are you going to have, and then you see this amazing thing that you've created. And I think that's the powerful thing, right? Is it's not like you ordered something at a restaurant. Like this came out of me, went into her. She went through so much craziness for 9 months, her body, physically, mentally, the swings, like all the good and the bad from it. And then she pushes this out. This powerful woman pushes out another one of us, another
whole human with arms and fingers and eyes, and
like if you put that on paper and told someone, in the dinosaur ages, like, what?
Mm-hmm.
They would never believe you. They're like, no, humans can't reproduce. This is insane. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
there's no logic to that. Yes. And it's funny because we're kind of like instilled this, like, this thing of like creatures repopulating, right? Like, we know it exists. It's not like you've seen it, right? Like in your teens, you go to the zoo and 2 rhinos had sex and they made whatever. It still boggles my mind.
It is, yeah, and it should. It should.
What a gift.
It should boggle our minds. We should look at that and be in awe.
Every day. Yeah. What a gift.
Yeah. So, you've got 3 things you do with your family. Well, you've got more than that, certainly, but 3 things that we talked about beforehand. And I'm really curious about this first one because you talked about working out with your family. And I struggled when I first had kids to work out because I'm trying to go to the gym and then come home. And after a while, I feel like it's just taking from my family, and it's not, it's a conflict internal to me. I want to go work out, I want to be with my family, but I can't do both at the same time. Or so it seems. And I realized a few years ago that part of my problem with working out with my family was just me. I just didn't know how to do it. So tell me how you work out with your kids. What does that look like? How do you prioritize it? How do you make it still enjoyable and not just a battle and just give up and quit?
Yeah, that's probably the most commonly asked question that I get is, how do you work out with your kids? And the answer is not well. It's not well. But it's better than
not
nothing.
Doing it.
Yeah. But I would say the easy answer is do something. Well, first of all, here's step 1. If you have a gym membership, cancel it. It's pointless. Because round trip, if you're spending 2 hours away from the household, that's crazy because you could spend 2 hours with the family. So I would say cancel that right away. Plus, it's cheaper to have a home gym anyway, in my opinion. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, think about doing kettlebells.
They also don't allow kids into the gym, so you can't really take your kids with you.
That's correct. Even though you could go into like the kid zone, which is like horrible because it's, full of crazy germs and diseases, and someone's getting paid like $7 an hour to watch your kid. That's crazy.
And ironically, usually they have a TV and they're playing movies, so your kids are going to go to the gym and just sit around and watch movies.
Just keep them at home locked up if you're going to do that.
Right.
So cancel that. And the number 2 is, maybe think about some kettlebells.
Okay.
And the reason I say kettlebells is you can do some crazy kettlebell training in 20 minutes. That's going to be 10 times more beneficial than doing free weights and cardio. Everything from kettlebell swings to, clean and jerks. Everything. It's just more of a full body workout. Even if it's like 10 or 15 pound kettlebells and then gradually move up to now I'm at 35 to 70 depending on the workout. So I would say do that. And that way you can get in a nice workout within 15, 20 minutes. And you do that 3 times a week. All you need. Now, what are the kids doing at this point? Well, from experience, I have a 2-car garage. Half of it is the gym. And the other half is like I have a sauna and a cold plunge and things like that. So I bring up my daughter's table and we set up. We do Play-Doh some days, or she'll do Play-Doh on her own. She's almost 3, so obviously it depends on the age. But when she was 6 months old, I had her bouncer. And she was just watching me playing with her teethers, like just amazed at like, what the hell is this guy doing? And she still doesn't know me. She's only 6 months old. She's like, why is this stranger keeping me in this garage and throwing things around? Right. It was really funny watching her face as I was dumping into, 35-degree cold water. She was really shocked about that. But, now at the age she's at now, she plays with bath toys when I go and do my cold plunge. So she's not in it with me, of course, because it's freezing. But she'll take duckies and she'll play, and I'm only in there a couple minutes, and then I hop out, and then I work out as she, kind of either watches me or plays with Play-Doh, or, we have this really cool workbench because they're seeing dad and mom have discipline, stick with the routine, work out. And then eventually she'll get old enough and she'll understand, oh, at 9 a.m. we do this, or at 5 p.m. we do this. And it's instilling a routine. Sometimes she says, well, Daddy, I don't want to work out. And I go, okay, well, Daddy has to. So you could stay in the living room and I keep the door open and she'll play in the living room sometimes. And I go, you don't have to be in here, but Daddy wants to be healthy. So this is part of Daddy's routine. And if I say that for 5 years straight, guess what? When she's 6 and she goes to gymnastics or she wants to do karate or whatever, she knows that this is it. We show up and we put in the work and we do what we have to do to be healthy. And I think those values are so important because once they're 15 and they've never seen mommy and daddy work out, but you tell them they need to stop eating Cheetos and work out, they're going to look at you like you're crazy.
Right.
So it's more powerful if you don't know what you're doing and just go in the garage and do push-ups for 20 minutes. That's way more impactful than doing nothing.
That's really good. We talked a little bit before this about that life transferred to our children is mostly caught, not taught. And that's what you're saying with exercising. You got to become the person you want your children to become.
That's right. And just adding to what you just said, I always like to say, kids rarely do what you say, but they always do what you do. So you could tell them 1,000 things, but most likely they're probably not going to listen. And I'm speaking from experience because I was a kid and I never listened to my parents. But you ask my mother, and I am like a spitting image of my father. I don't know how, but she always tells me, you're just like your father. Well, that's because I've watched him for 40 years. It's like, but he tells me to do something and I don't do it. But if he does it, I'll probably do it. It's like, it's just one of those things where that's just how things are. So you have to instill that in early.
Yeah, it kind of shows you that, I do a lot of talking in my family, but I should probably do a lot less talking and a lot more doing.
Same. I'm with you, man. Yeah, I think that's a dad thing. That's a dad trait. And not a good dad trait, but it's a dad trait.
What about in those moments where, or did you ever experience those moments where you found yourself frustrated? You're wanting to work out. You've got a family responsibility to take care of your daughter. You also feel a responsibility to keeping yourself healthy and exercising. How did you navigate that?
It's a good question. Yeah, they're very frustrating a lot of times. I mean, even just today, matter of fact, I was supposed to work out today, but my daughter had like some crazy, she's 2.5, so she had a bunch of meltdowns for no reason, no surprise. And I got very frustrated. And then I thought to myself, I'll have this little podcast with Tim and I'll do a couple conference calls and I'll do some work and then I'll just work out later. No big deal. So now I've been able to control it a little bit more because I'm in the mindset of it's not about just being, perfect with everything. Sometimes it's the imperfection that we have to embrace a little bit. And I looked at it like, well, I can't work out today, but now I get to hang out with my daughter for an extra 30 minutes one-on-one. So we sat down in her chair and we played Play-Doh together for 30 minutes, no screens, no TV, just me and her mumbling, me, drawing Mickey Mouse with a knife. And it was cool. So now it wasn't always like that. So to answer your question, I think there was a lot of frustration because we want to stick with our old routine. But if you haven't figured out already, your routines have changed. And they're going to keep changing. Every day it's going to be different. You're going to think, oh, I'm going to wake up at 8 and I'm going to cook breakfast. Nope. You're going to wake up at 6 and then you're not going to cook breakfast because your daughter doesn't want to eat it. And your routines are going to change every day. So it's okay to have routines, but do not be shocked if they mess up. You just got to pivot and you got to go a different route. So I think the one thing that I found was any free time I do have, involve her as much as I can, right? And try not to get frustrated that I'm not doing exactly what I need to do when it comes to working out specifically or really anything. Because again, I always go back to, why am I working out? I'm working out not to look good and find a date, right? I'm working out because I want to be healthy and strong. So I'm not necessarily worried about the cosmetic benefits of working out. It's about the longevity stuff. So, living a healthier life, it's not necessarily important that you're throwing around weights all the time. It's just about having a routine, sticking to it, and, even doing body weight stuff and just doing something that you're able to do every single day. And the more I can involve her, the better. So I think that's how I eventually came up to be, where I got to stop thinking about, oh, I need to bench press 225 and I need to do. It's like, come on, you have a toddler now. You're screwed. Okay. Your routine is just do what you can. That's what I say. Just do what you can.
Yeah. It's so interesting that I found, it's not worth the relational damage that can be done by loving your workout routine more than caring for your family is not worth it. But your workout routine is important because, as you pointed out, that's what will allow you to enjoy your family for longer. And
that's right.
Or at least one of the things, hopefully.
Yeah.
That, even if it's not longevity, it may be physical ability, to still run with your children when they're 15 or 18, to still play tag when they get older and not have them beat you too soon, Although my 14-year-old, I think he's right there. He's about to be faster than me.
Oh no.
And I've held him off for 14 years now. I don't know how much longer I can go.
Yeah. You trained him well. He's taken the reins. Yeah. No, so, that's a great point. And the mindset struggle, I think, is pretty clear. Where you have to take care of yourself first. Like that's like someone always asks me. They go, "Hey, who's the most important person in your life?" I go, "Me." Like, is it my kid? Sure, that's the easy answer, but it's me. Because if I let myself go and I have nothing but, oatmeal cookies and Coca-Cola and I sit on the couch and I binge Netflix, that's not good for my mental or physical health, which means it's not good for my kid. Like if the plane is going down, who's going to put the mask on first? Should I put it on my kid or should I put it on me? I got to put it on me so I can take care of her.
Yeah.
And again, that sounds kind of silly and counterintuitive, but a lot of people, I think, want to take the road of like, my most important thing in my life is my family. That's a stupid, stupid answer. Because the most important person in your life should be you. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you cannot take care of your family. You are ill-equipped. And I say that to my wife too all the time. She goes, you're the most important thing to me. I go, I shouldn't be. You need to be. Because if you do everything to make me happy, guess who's unhappy?
Yeah, the mask analogy, I really appreciate that analogy because to take care of yourself, as you said, the reason you put your mask on is so that you can take care of somebody else.
That's right.
And as you pointed out, you wouldn't be able to unless you put it on.
That's right.
And so even if it's by sheer force,
yes,
you ought to put it on first so that you can do the other thing.
Yeah.
That's more important in a sense.
That's right. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm grabbing that mask with my right hand, immediately the left hand is going to my kid. Like it's a millisecond, but you got to do it. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to swallow. So like just going back to the working out thing, because we're talking about it, is everyone, is like, well, dude, don't you want to like just hang out with your kid and not work out with your kid? And I'm like, she's working out with me. She's doing like kind of sort of a push-up, a horrible form push-up, but she's doing a half.
Yeah.
But she's there with me. What do you mean we're bonding? Oh, what? Sorry, we're not playing Minecraft on an iPad? No, we're working out in my garage gym and sweating together. Like this is bonding. And again, I think that's the whole point is like, she's not in the nicest way possible. I'm not on this planet to appease her. Like she is a gift, but she is gonna be molded into our lives. So like I used to work out all the time. So my daughter's now going to work out with me. She doesn't have to work out when she gets older. She's going to make her own decision. But for now, this is part of my life. She is part of my life. She is going to be in my life doing things that I like to do because it makes me happy, which in turn makes me a better husband and a better father. And then if I'm a better father and a better husband, my daughter is going to be extremely happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's the mindset shift.
You're teaching her that the world doesn't revolve around her.
Bingo.
And I think that's very important, for especially in our culture. I mean, what does you talk a little bit about? We talked a little bit about screen time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the the biggest influences that having a lot of screen time has on us is that it makes us believe that we can get whatever we want whenever we want it. Any question we have, we can get it answered right then. Any thing we imagine, we can watch it whenever we feel like it, and any way we want to feel. That's right. And so it emphasizes this idea of self-centeredness, I think, that is it's learned, it's caught, not taught. I mean, it's caught by practice. And I mean, you think about even more how that's coming to fruition with AI generated entertainment. Think of the day when you can type in, I want to watch a rom-com where so-and-so main character does this, second character does this, enter, and you get to watch literally whatever you want, whenever you command it. I don't know what will be worse for the human soul than to not just think life revolves around ourselves, but to be trained from birth to believe it, that that's the case.
But like you said, you're going to be able to make a movie based off a prompt, and it's going to be an hour and a half long. And then you're going to watch the movie curated to exactly what you wanted. The beginning, the middle, the ending, the stories, the characters, the looks, the feel, everything. And then you're going to go out in the real world. You're going to be very disappointed. My guy, listen to these words. In 10 years, this stuff is going to be unrecognizable to you. It's definitely going to be unrecognizable to a 2-year-old, because in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, this is evolving every single hour. You cannot keep up with this. The only thing you can do is, as an adult and as a parent, you can keep up with it and educate your kid on it. You know, the analogy of like the kids have to know about tech to be the future of the leaders of the world. That's like saying they have to drink alcohol to understand it's bad for them. That doesn't make any sense. You're not going to give your kid alcohol till they're 21, right? So 21 years. But you have to do everything you can to educate them. And that's what we got to do with technology. They don't have to consume the alcohol to know it's bad. They have to be educated on it. And then as they get older, they're going to make their own decisions. So you got to educate your kids on all the stuff that's going on as it continues to evolve and change, which means you got to be up on it, which is very, very difficult because it's ever growing. Yeah,
nonstop.
It's changing nonstop. And that's why I'm very, very grateful that I'm in the industry of content creation, and I'm staying on top of it constantly. So it's like, it's always one thing that I get asked a lot about, but our kid is not going to have a screen until a very long time. And 18? It's not, I think at that point, you kind of have to, right? Because they're going to have jobs and things like that. But, who knows? It's also like, you give them an iPad now, and again, I'm not throwing shade, but you give them an iPad now, and that easy reward from hitting a button and getting the satisfaction, for an underdeveloped brain, that is crack. And when they go out in the real world and they don't get that same satisfaction of like touching a flower and it turning into something, now when they go touch a real flower, they're going to be upset and they're going to have meltdowns because, the flower's not doing what I want it to do. Yeah. That's how their brain develops. And again, a brain isn't fully developed until it's like 25 anyway. And I could speak from experience. I was an idiot till I was 30. So it's like, again, I go, what's the intention behind it? Is there a reason behind it? I find there's so many great benefits to my kid going out in the morning, letting the sun hit her face. Like, dude, there's something beautiful in it. Just watching her. Of course I do it too, but just going out side by side, watching her. And then she does this. She goes, it's like, I get misty just thinking about it. Like I get goosebumps because she feels the sun, she hears the birds, and she's not in a rush to go play with her freaking screen because she doesn't even know what it is. But she's just enjoying the moment. She's enjoying the earth, and her feet are in the grass barefoot, and she's letting the sun hit her. Luckily, we're in Florida, so that weather is nice year long. But it's those moments where she knows what birds are, and she knows what caterpillars are, and beetles, and like you ask most kids that age, they don't even know what that is. Or they point out a beetle and think it's supposed to be a different color because they're used to Fortnite. So it's like there is something wrong. We're doing something wrong to these kids where you're not letting them experience what's outside, because it's way more beautiful outside these four walls than inside.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is incredible to think that for a child, or really an adult also, I mean, you think about adults who have died playing VR because they forgot to eat, you know?
And I think the attitude of no screens might seem kind of crazy, but we didn't grow up with screens, and we're fine. Right. So, I think and I would even probably challenge people to say, the fact that you do have a screen now, do you think your life is better off? I bet if you're honest with yourself, the answer is probably no. Your life was better in the 90s with no screens.
Yeah. I've said that to my wife recently, that I said, I don't know if all the things I've accomplished on the internet, on the computer, have really added to my life.
Right.
And in many ways, I think they've taken more than they've added. And especially when I think about the way some of these products are designed to hold on to you for very long periods of time, I would say that it feels more like walking down the streets with a bunch of thieves around, and you have to constantly avoid all the thieves. Eventually you just say, man, it'd be better if I just walked down another street.
Right. Yeah.
For all that stuff combined, plus then you have your kids getting on it, and the same problem with them. People are trying to sell them stuff and influence them and convince them to do things that they're not ready to say no to.
Yeah. And maybe, they don't know how to, because
That's right.
It sounds great. If, again, I always go back to, I was an idiot in my 20s, like most of us. And I just couldn't imagine the poor decisions I would make if I had a phone in my 20s, because I made poor decisions without a phone. So I just couldn't imagine adding that extra
to the entire world. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. So it's wild.
So we've talked about working out with your family, which I think is awesome. Going barefoot in the grass in the morning, which you mentioned that briefly, going outside in the morning and just enjoying the air, looking up at the sun and the stars, depending on what time it is.
Yeah.
Experiencing the real world, trying to appreciate the world that God has made, and no screen time. What is it about those practices that you want your daughter to remember?
I think that it just humbles you. It makes you understand that our species has gone through some wild things, and we're fortunate enough to have these four walls that we call home, and we go inside and we can, cook fire by pressing a button, or we can use fire by pressing a button. And there's fake air that comes through a vent that runs on electricity, but it's not oxygen. It's just circulated air. That's great because it keeps us cool during the summer. But that's not Earth. That's not where we live. We live on a planet that has a lot of issues, but so many gifts that we're not even remotely qualified to have. We are the worst thing on this planet. So I think humbling my kids is important, and understanding that this is a gift, what we're doing, which is why you probably don't have your kids litter, right?
Yeah.
No matter what age, you're not going to litter in front of your kids. Hopefully you don't litter when they're not around, but you want to treat this place with respect. And I think teaching them at an early age that grass is beautiful, and the soil, right, makes everything that we're able to eat. And if we don't take care of the soil, we're not able to eat fresh food. And, I talk to my 3-year-old about pesticides. Every time we grab fruit from the grocery store and we wash them, I put apple cider vinegar and baking soda, and I talk about pesticides and how, unfortunately our civilization has created these things to kill insects because we don't like the taste of insects. I still don't know why we use pesticides, but, I talk about that. She doesn't understand a word of it, but over the course of years, she's going to understand and appreciate that we're able to grow these things called fruits and veggies. We eat them, we consume them, they give us fuel, and they're not easy to come by. And I'm lucky enough to where my parents kind of did that, I guess, not to the level that I'm at. But I think now more than ever, I think it's important, because they're going to be so consumed by artificial shit that you have got to bring them down to reality. And the reality is these things are not real. These things are fake. Everything on here is fake. So you have to bring them down to reality and let them know this is a gift, and everything you're looking at is a gift. And without the oxygen and without the sun, without the ozone layer, without the moon, we wouldn't have tides. Like all this type of stuff, I tell my kid, one ear and out the other with her, but eventually she's going to understand all of this is important and it all makes sense. And I think that is so beautiful and important for these young kids to understand.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit before. I mentioned that, I come at fatherhood from a Christian perspective, and, you mentioned taking care of the earth. And I'm always a little disappointed that in the last, 50 years or 70 years, it seems like some people have used Christianity as a way to justify doing damage to the earth. And, I don't worship the earth, so I think it's a good thing. But I worship a God who created the earth. And, in the beginning in Genesis, it says that God made all things good. And then he gave man and humans, men and women, the responsibility to steward, to take care of the earth, and to tend it, and to plant, and to name the animals, which we're still doing to this day. We're still naming new species, and we're still naming stars, and we're naming all kinds of things that we discovered that are new. And I find myself saddened that in the name of God, someone would destroy what God has made. That seems backwards. And so in many ways, even though I know you don't come from that same perspective, so I think that is an important thing for us to teach our children, how to take care of what God has given.
Yeah, and even though, as we mentioned earlier, even though I wasn't raised Christian or religious by any means, and I'm more open-minded to everything about it. But I think one thing that I was raised on was, if you're at someone's house, you ask before you go in the fridge, right? You don't make a mess.
Yeah.
And
you don't spray paint the wall just because you feel like it.
Right. So whether God made the earth or, it's just a series of random events that led us to this point, why would you mess it up?
Yeah.
You got to be respectful either way. And I think that's the beautiful thing about raising kids, whether you raise them, doesn't matter how you raise them, as long as you raise them that respect for the earth, the planet, for, the walls that you live in. You want to teach them reward and teach them good behavior. And then, maybe if they do certain things, maybe they'll get a reward. And so there's little things that we're not thinking about, which are kind of the big things, which is like this whole thing, this rock that we're floating on. Dude, this is it. This is the chances of us being here is like 1 trillion to 1. What is it? It's
very tiny.
Yeah. The odds of us being even born is crazy.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're here is important.
Yeah, no, right on. Yeah, we had a little bit of a similar experience with our first child. It wasn't as long as you guys experienced, but the same sort of expecting to just get pregnant and then it not happening for, I think it was 1.5 years for us.
Yeah.
And I think that was for us, we ended that time saying, I thought we were over life. I thought we could just decide. And, God showing us that you're not. I'm not over life. That he gets to decide. Well, in our case, he gets to decide,
sure.
When that happens. And I think to your point of just being grateful, being appreciative, acknowledging that maybe the same thing that you mentioned, trying to teach your children without screen time, or maybe I mentioned it, but
that's right.
We're not the center of the world.
That's right. Yeah. The faster you can, or the earlier you can teach them that, rather, I think, the better, right? That's the key.
Yeah.
It just humbles you, and it helps us too as parents. So I need to get better at a lot of things, and I think I'm always learning and growing, and I'm never going to be perfect. No one is, but I think the more we can work on ourselves and then kind of instill that into ourselves, I think, I forget who said it, but it was like, it might have been like Jerry Seinfeld, where he was like, having kids is the greatest show on earth.
Mm.
And when you have a kid, you realize that you're not as good of a human as maybe you thought.
Mm.
Because, like, for example, like we talked about cursing before getting on this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, I probably shouldn't curse at work, right? You don't curse at a conference, right? I mean, so you don't curse in front of your boss. You don't curse in front of your kid. So maybe you just should practice not cursing. And that's one thing that I need to do, is I need to kind of put the soap in my mouth, and I need to calm down, because I'm raising this little human. And I don't want her going around saying the F word constantly in the grocery store. So, it teaches you a lot. It teaches you patience, teaches you how to be a better person. And I think the more we can do that, there's no downside to that. It's all upside. It's all positive.
It does. I would agree with that 100%, that having children, shows you how weak you are, how many mistakes you make, how many things you do that are not good.
That's right.
And
that's right.
in many ways, I, at least in my own life, I see that, like, that's God's mercy to not just leave us in where we are, to not just leave us to our own devices.
That's right.
But there's no way to replace that. Who else in your life could be that person to show you what you really like, except your own kid? And you look at the kid, and we said this before. I said, that sounds really rude. When I hear my kid say something, and then I realize that sounds just like me. Gosh, I'm a jerk, dude. Oh my gosh.
I've done that. Yeah. It's so true.
Otherwise, I would never know. There's no one else in my life who would show me in that kind of way, and not even know they're doing it.
That's right. Yeah, they humble you.
Yeah, they do. Tell us about Human Dad. What is that? What are you working on? What does that look like? How can people connect with you?
Oh yeah, thanks, man. Well, I've always, if you haven't imagined, or if you haven't guessed by now, that I've always kind of had this perspective of, we're all human, and we're all different. We're all unique. We're all flawed. So I kind of always had this like stoic mentality for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I even have a podcast called Humanity and Hashtags. Mm-hmm. So where we talk about how life meets the algorithm. Mm-hmm. And once I became a father, as you know, it like takes over your whole personality. Like I had no idea, even my content now, it went from like entrepreneur stuff and podcasting to now it's like all dad advice and life advice and stuff. I never thought that was going to happen. So eventually I started realizing that there's not a whole lot of dad apparel brands that I could relate with. A lot of dad brands out there, and there's some great ones, like hats, for example, they're all like the same cursive font and they're all kind of goody two shoes. And that's not dad life. Dad life is messy and chaotic and unpredictable and annoying and beautiful and glorious and the best thing ever. But there's no dad apparel, I think, that speaks to the real life craziness of it. So I really got together a bunch of dads and we figured out how can we create an apparel brand that's unique, edgy, different, kind of like the liquid death of dad apparel. And that's what we came up with, Human Dad, where our slogan is human first, dad always. So the idea is you're always going to be a dad, but just remember you're human first. Like take a deep breath. You're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. And that's a good thing. So that's what our brand is all about, is embracing the chaos, and it's for the perfectly imperfect fathers. So you can find us at humandad.com. We specialize in hats, shirts, and tanks. One of them I'm rocking right now, but high quality materials and just only the best. And we ship worldwide. So it's been fun, challenging. I've been doing everything myself. Luckily, I got some dads behind me now that help me, create some content and kind of help me grow the brand. So it's been great. It's, aside from being a dad, it's like one of the coolest things ever.
That's cool. Awesome. What is one last final piece of advice that all dads should be doing? And I realize that's very redundant because last and final mean the same thing. So, give me one final piece of advice that all dads should be doing.
Final piece of, man, I got some goodies. If I had to pick one thing, I would say if you can live off these 4 pillars of fatherhood, I think you're good. So if you can raise your kid to be kind, resourceful, resilient, and question everything, I think you're on the right track. So raise your kid to be kind, resourceful, resilient, and have them question everything. And I think you got a good chance of raising a good human.
Sweet. Tony, thanks so much for your time.
Tim, pleasure, dude. Thank you for having me.
Fellow fathers and friends, so glad you could join us for this episode. To stay connected, visit our website at fatherandfriend.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media sites. Until our next episode, keep showing up, loving deeply, and making an impact for the good of your family. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Father and Friend.